welcome to the Around the Ballpark podcast. My name is Mike Redman, alongside my co-host Darren Redman, my brother. We are here today talking a little bit about the San Francisco Giants and also some other Bay Area sports as well. And we are privileged to have on our show today. His name is Larry Krueger of The Krueg Show, can be found on YouTube and also goes by @SportsLarryK on X. Larry, glad to have you with us.
Hey, glad to be here. Thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting me.
You're very welcome. And before we kind of get into the good fun stuff, Darren, you have a message for our listeners?
Well, attention Palm Bay and really everybody else. If you got tax troubles, Nashville Tax Solutions has got you covered. Whether you're behind on your returns, facing a lien, or just need some expert advice because things have changed, their team at Nashville Tax Solutions is ready to help. Chris Bennett and his team have saved many people from financial nightmares. They're knowledgeable, they're clear, and they're compassionate. And they know that not everyone has the same problem. Problems with taxes, or at least things that potentially could be problems, are not templates. So don't let taxes stress you out. Reach out to Nashville Tax Solutions today. Call 615-502-2250 and visit NashvilleTaxSolutions.com. And if you just want to email them at info@NashvilleTaxSolutions.com. Nashville Tax Solutions, where tax resolution is achieved.
Awesome. Thank you, Darren. So, Larry, once again, if you wouldn't mind just a little bit about yourself for those that may or may not be familiar with you, and we'll get into good stuff right after that.
Yeah, I pay taxes in California. If that's, since we're on the tax front, and we sure are collecting a lot of tax money, and we can afford two wars to go on at one time. No, I'm just joking. I live in Northern California, and used to scout football players in the Canadian Football League and then the NFL with the Cardinals. I've been covering Bay Area sports since mid-1990s, and I've been on YouTube for the last couple of years. You can find my YouTube channel. It's called The Krueg Show, Krueg Show. And we've got about 50,000 subs, and we've been doing it for a couple of years and talk a lot of Niners, a lot of Giants, a lot of Warriors, Bay Area sports mostly. Do a lot of live streams, do a lot of videos, and really enjoying it. So, yeah, check out The Krueg Show. I also work for 95.7 The Game Radio here in San Francisco. I do the 49er pregame show and fill in on the radio whenever they need me. And, I'm a father of four. I got a daughter in med school. I got a son who just graduated college who's now bumming around Europe. I've got a senior in high school who's just graduating on his way to college, and I got an 8th grader on his way to high school. So if I look tired, if I look run down, there's reasons for it.
Well, first of all, that whole bumming in Europe for a year, I think more Americans should do that. I really do. Just get that, just learn the world. You're going to be answering to bosses or yourself for decades, God willing. Take a year or so and just experience life. Get some culture that way. I think that's huge. And congratulations on the medical student. That's great as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. She's 24 today. So happy birthday to my daughter Anna. She's wonderful. She goes to Emory out in Atlanta, and she's doing well. And son just graduated Cal Poly. He's going to be he was a construction management major, and he actually is my producer on my YouTube channel. And I produce content. He puts it on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, you name it. And it's really done an incredible job the last couple of years. We had about anywhere between 1,000 to 3,000 subs a month, and have about anywhere between 1 million to 4 million views in a month, and it's going really well.
If you don't mind me going down this rabbit hole, but right, this is how people talk. People don't realize, one, how hard it is to get into Cal Poly to begin with, and two, it's a beautiful campus that really freaked me out the first time I went there, because I pull into the parking lot and there's deer in the parking lot, and I'm like, this is awesome. And so congratulations to your son. I really enjoy that school.
Yeah, thank you.
That's awesome. Speaking of beautiful, we'll go there. Let's start with Oracle Park. So for me, yeah, I've only been fortunate enough to go to 5 baseball stadiums on my end, and hopefully make number 6 later this year. But to me, out of I did get to knock off Fenway off the list, which was number 2 for me. But number 1, Oracle Park, for me is where I would like to go the most. But that stadium is beautiful. For those that don't know, just some awesome little fun. One of the things I like to kind of chat about is just some fun facts about stadiums that everyone may not be aware of. One cool thing, of course, they have the 9-foot tall bronze statue of Willie Mays. God bless him. And we had, they're the only MLB stadium, I believe, to have a bowling alley, which is super cool. They also have an aquarium. And of course, a tribute to Candlestick Park, among some other items like the Coca-Cola bottle with the slide for kids and whatnot. So, but just kind of wanted to chat with both of you, I believe, just with your knowledge of Oracle Park and the beauty of what that park is, and just share a little bit with the listeners that may not be familiar or haven't been there yet.
It's an incredible spot. I mean, I don't even know where to start. I will say this: opening day in that ballpark just goes to show that any one individual game in baseball can give you a totally misrepresentation of the park. So we were there on opening day, 2000, 25 years ago, roughly. Dodgers Giants opening day, sitting in the left field bleachers, and Kevin Elster, slap hitting defensive shortstop who had no offensive game at all, hit 3 home runs on opening day. And we all said, "Oh my gosh, this place is a bandbox. This place is a joke. They're never, there's going to be, every game's going to be 11-10. And what did they do here?" And it just was an aberration. It just was a warm day. Usually April air is very heavy here in the Bay Area, a lot of moisture. The ball doesn't typically go out, but he hit 3 that day, and we thought it was a bandbox. And we found out in the quarter century since that it's anything but. I mean, it's a very live ballpark down the left field line, but it takes a really good shot to get it out to left center, right center, and even right field. So it's a beautiful ballpark. I think it's fair. It's right on the water. There was an awful lot of failed, attempts to get a park built there before it got done. It's an amazing thing that it got done. It was 100% privately financed. It is paid off. So the Giants have no mortgage. Every penny that stadium brings is 100% pure profit to them at this juncture. And you're right. There's a club that is in a bar in the outfield wall in right field. That is it's called the Gotham Club, and it's an exclusive club, and there's a bowling alley, and yeah, there's a lot going on. It's a condensed amount of space. Like if you come here, I've been to many parks as well. I was at New Comiskey a few years back, and the corridors are really, really wide. And if you go to Arizona for spring training and go to Salt River or any of their newer parks, the corridors are really, really wide. Well, this was built on the water, so the corridors are pretty narrow. So it's not quite as easy, as comfortable to walk around the park as some other modern parks, but can't beat the location.
I would say that I like the intimacy of the corridors, because it gives me a feel of kind of that remember when. Do you have this perception of what it must have been like? For example, if you're ever in the old Yankee Stadium, or even the one from the 70s when it kind of put a good fresh paint on and made some changes, those were very narrow. The corridors were narrow. I've been to Oracle, or I still call it AT&T Park. I'm sorry.
I still call it Pac Bell Park, so don't feel bad.
Even better. Yeah. But for a couple of things, so just some tangents, if I may. I've been on this podcast and my other podcast as well, and said, I would tell you the best place to sit for me is right around Triples Alley, because you get up, you can look at the bay, you have that streetcar up there, great food, and Triples Alley is kind of cool, especially before they had the bullpens back there. It's just a beautiful park. And it's one of those places, like I was telling Mike, when he went to Fenway, that you don't go there just for the game. Get there early and just take it in, right? You want to that's a park you want to walk around because it's great. And oh, by the way, though, don't sit in the upper deck if you're afraid of looking down because it's pretty intense. But it's safe, but it's pretty intense.
You get a great view up there.
Oh yeah.
You get a great view. It's called the view level. I think the best seat in the house is that second level, which is, so the bottom level is kind of flat. Then the second level is kind of pitched, but it's really close to the field. And it almost is like you're sitting in an opera house or something. It's really bizarre. You're really close. And of course now, and when the park opened, it didn't have netting foul line to foul line. Now there's, of course, netting foul line to foul line, and the netting's fine. It protects people. I'm over the days of criticizing it, but I don't love sitting behind the netting. I like sitting above the netting. So to me, if you ever get a chance, sit on that club level, which is
I'll do that.
The second deck, and see if you can get in the first row. And it's just like sitting like right on top of the field. It's really pretty neat.
So before I forget, and Mike, I know you have a bunch of questions, but we know about the passing of Willie Mays, and we know what he was and is, but we lost Orlando Cepeda, the baby bull. If you can talk a little bit about him and his impact, because a lot of times he gets overlooked with Willie McCovey and some of the other great, but this guy was great.
Great RBI man. It came along at a time where the Giants farm system was really cooking, right? They had Willie Mays, they had Willie McCovey, they had, Orlando Cepeda, Jim Ray Hart, Willie Kirkland, George Foster, Gary Matthews, Gary Maddox. I mean, these guys all came up at these guys came up in about an 8-year period. So, I mean, the Giants scouts in the late 60s and early 70s were amazing. And Orlando Cepeda is, they called him Baby Bull. They called him Cha-Cha. Met him many times through the years. And, the one cool part about these guys, they really hung out at the yard. I mean, both Willies, Willie McCovey, Willie Mays, Cepeda, these guys, it wasn't like they were around on Old Timers Day and that's it. These guys were there. I mean, these guys have spent the last 20, 25 years, hanging out at the yard and being there. So the Giants have done a really good thing. They're a class act. They make all of their ex-players ambassadors. I'm sure they're on the payroll. There's no doubt in my mind that Willie Mays, Willie McCovey, Orlando Cepeda, and others are on the Giants payroll and have been for years and years. They're instructors in spring training. They're hanging out. I mean, Orlando Cepeda was an incredible power hitter, and he just happened to play the same position as Willie McCovey. And the Giants stupidly traded him before the 67 season to the Cardinals for Ray Sadecki. Now, this is 3 years before I was ever born, but it goes down as one of the worst trades in Giants history. Sadecki was a good pitcher, but Orlando went to St. Louis. That 67 Cardinals team with Gibson and so many greats was one of the greatest teams really of anybody's lifetime. And 67 Cardinals were great. And he was the driver. He was absolutely the driver. And then eventually I think he went on to Atlanta maybe Atlanta, maybe even Boston after that. But Baby Bull, I mean, tremendous strength in his hands, tremendous power, just a tremendous bat. What a force he was. I mean, the Giants in that period, I mean, they developed Bill White. They traded Bill White away for Sad Sam Jones. They traded away Cepeda for Sadecki. I mean, it's like they really, I mean, George Foster got out of there. Gary Matthews got out of there. And then really the Giants let's just say from the mid 70s on, they produced Jack Clark, Chili Davis, and that's about it. I mean, we're talking about, it's been decades since the Giants. I mean, just now do the Giants have, Elliot Ramos and Matos and some of these guys that are outfielders coming out of their farm system. They've had I don't even call it a dry spell. I mean, it's a true famine. I mean, they have not been able to develop. Dan Gladden and Chili Davis, and are literally two of the last successful outfielders the Giants farm system has produced. So it's amazing. They went from an era where they produced unbelievable amounts of dangerous hitters, and many of them were outfielders, to 35 years where they couldn't find any, and now it's just starting to kind of come back around. So they say sports is cyclical, but man, the Giants have been through a down cycle as far as producing outfielders.
It's so interesting you bring that up, because I never thought of that. That is so astute. Seriously. If you think about it, now they were bringing up in the late 2000, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, wonderful pitchers. Dominating. I was covering the Fresno Grizzlies at the time when they were the AAA farm team for the Giants. I got to see Lincecum play, and a bunch of the other guys, the Freak and some of these other guys.
Kane and Bumgarner and Lincecum,
and
they all came. Johnny Sanchez, they all came through there.
And it was amazing to watch. And I got to see Buster Posey catch them, with them for a couple of minutes. If you can talk about that team for a while, that won 3 World Series in 5 years. They were great.
It was truly amazing. The Giants, the Giants had a down spell there. They were good. Okay, so they opened the park in 2000. They won 97 games. They went to the playoffs. 2001, Barry Bonds hit 73 home runs. 2002, they go to the World Series and lose in 7 games to the Angels. 2003, they say goodbye to Dusty Baker, bring in Felipe Alou as the manager, and they won 100-plus games. So they were rolling in the early years of this ballpark. And then the bottom fell out. Then eventually a couple of years after, that was, the bottom fell out in 2005. They weren't good in 2005. They weren't good in 2006. They weren't good in 2007. They got rid of Felipe and brought in Bochy, I believe, in 2008. They still had some rough patches there as they were trying to kind of rekindle. But in the amateur draft, in some of those lean years, they were hitting. And they hit on Lincecum, and they hit on Kane, and they hit on Bumgarner. And eventually they brought John Barr in. He hit on his first draft pick, which was Buster Posey. And then suddenly they, had the makings of a largely homegrown rotation. In 2010, their pitching was outstanding. And 2012, very underrated team. I think they won it out of the wild card. And then 2014, the Bumgarner, Game 7 performance was maybe the greatest World Series performance anybody's ever seen. So it's like they had a core there. And Lincecum, Kane, Bumgarner, Vogelsong, these Brian Wilson, Buster Posey, Pablo Sandoval, Brandon Belt, Brandon Crawford. These guys were all homegrown guys. So they had about half the team were homegrown guys. They also had 4 relievers, Javi Lopez, Sergio Romo, Jeremy Affeldt.
So good. Romo is so
Garcia,
good.
And then Brian Wilson, of course. And, and Bochy, is a real, to me, it's like you win in baseball. Some of the most important elements of winning. You got to have a great manager, because a great manager elevates you in October. You got to have a great catcher. If you really think about baseball and you think of the greatest teams that have ever played, the Yankees had Yogi Berra and some great managers. If you want to go to the Yankees in this latest run, they had Jorge Posada.
So
you want to go to the Big Red
so
Machine?
good.
The Big Red Machine had Johnny Bench.
Yep.
If you want to go to the Dodgers in the 70s, they had Steve Yeager. He was an all-star catcher. You think of all the great teams, the Giants with Buster Posey, the Cardinals with Yadi Molina. Mm-hmm. You win in baseball when you have a great manager, and you win in October, I should say, when you have a great manager and a transcendent type catcher. And that's what the Giants had. And so that was the strength of the Giants. Bochy used other catchers in the regular season, but not in the playoffs. In the playoffs, Buster Posey caught 100%. of the games. And I asked him about it after the 14 World Series, and he said, I catch Buster every postseason game because he's a genius back there. Bochy himself was a catcher. He knows what he's looking at. And Buster, was just absolutely genius. I mean, great game caller, great framer, great catch and throw guy, good hitter. I mean, he's just a tremendous baseball player. In a lot of ways, reminded me a lot of Derek Jeter. Just always said and did the right things.
Good
Played,
Good pull.
made it look accidental. Like, there's people that walk around saying Jeter was overrated. Well, Jeter was not overrated. And there are people that say that Buster Posey's overrated, and Buster Posey wasn't overrated. So we're in that world now, if you don't have, overt greatness as far as your natural tools, you're not 6'5" and have light tower power and unbelievable foot speed, that everybody's like, he's overrated. But in baseball, it's so much more about skill and your smarts and instincts, and there's just so much more there. But yeah, those were great teams. Bochy was a great manager. They had a killer pen. They played really good defense. They had a lot of homegrown players. And they just had this, Bochy had this, I used to joke with him about it, that nobody walked around at 5 o'clock before a 7 o'clock playoff game and looked more confident and cocky and in control than him. He just had a game day strut where he just really, he looked calm. He was calm. Bruce is, he had that that kind of, he had that guy from Major League sound, but he was very, very, very bright. And I think that sound, that kind of aw shucks, country sound, made people think that he was a bumpkin of some kind. But you know what? He was not. He was an incredibly bright manager, and he had great instincts. And he was really tough on his coaches. But yeah, I mean, those were great Giant teams for sure. Little magic carpet ride. They, one of those years they started Gregor Blanco in left field. One of those years they started Travis Ishikawa in left field.
I interviewed that guy. I'm sorry, I got to cut you off. I interviewed Travis one time when
good guy.
Great guy, because he's coaching minor leagues right now. So when he went to Fresno, I interviewed him, and boy, was he very happy to be on that team and get that opportunity by Bochy. He got to one of the big playoff home runs. It's just amazing.
One of the things I wish,
game winner.
Back with the three teams that we're talking about here, or the three World Series championship teams. One thing, unfortunately, was that all three World Series wins were done on the road. They didn't get an opportunity for any of the clinching games to be at the park, at home, which is unfortunate. But I mean, just looking at the numbers, 12 games to 4. If you look at the three, the 4-1 over the Texas Rangers back in 2010, and then of course the sweep of Detroit back in 2012. Still a great series. And then, of course, 2014 was that 7-game series over the Royals. So unfortunately, didn't get to have, that moment at home, but it just, and I remember some of those teams, they were called like the misfits. There was just a random group of guys. So there was some great talent on those teams, but some of the people on there, you had mentioned Ishikawa, like you look back, myself and Darren are actually diehard, long life suffering Met fans. And we look at one of the teams that they had that went to that Subway Series in their outfield. You would think, okay, World Series against the Yankees. We had Jay Payton, Timo Perez, and Benny Agbayani. I think the three most misfit outfielders you could possibly have to challenge for a World Series championship.
Don't bring up Benny Agbayani to Giants fans, because Giants fans remember the 2000 playoffs when the Mets. It's funny. I got into a real beef that year. So the Giants win game 1 over Mike Hampton. Ellis Burks hits a big shot down the left field line in game 1. Giants win game 1. Game 2, the Giants lost game 2. And it was a best of 5. And I was doing the post-game show. And I was going bananas that they lost game 2. And the reason I was going bananas that they lost game 2 is because I knew what the Mets were that year. The Mets had the best home record in all of baseball in 2000. And sure enough, Agbayani wins game 3 in like the 13th inning with a walk-off home run. And then they got one hit, I believe, by Bobby Jones. And I ripped the Giants at the end of game 2, and I'm like, they're done. This thing's done. The series is over. They're not going to come back. You know, they're not coming back, blah, blah, blah. And one of the veteran Chronicle columnists, Bruce Jenkins, took me to task in the Saturday column, and he said, you know, how ridiculous. I was listening to Larry Krueger on KNBR on the drive home crowd, and he was saying the season's over. What a ridiculous take, right? So he wrote this on the Saturday notes column. So the Giants lost that Thursday night, game 2, it's 1-1. They lose Saturday on the Agbayani home run. They're down 2-1. They get one hit by Bobby Jones in game 4, and they lose the series. I didn't even get back to do my radio show on Monday before this writer was already wrong. And I had the thing pegged. The Giants were already eliminated before my next show. Oh my God. I went to town.
Wow.
I went to town on this writer. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful, but it was, I mean, that's how, that was the Giants struggled there. I mean, 2000, painful. 2002, painful. 2003, painful. I mean, there was a lot of down disappointment in that run, in that era. So, you know, let's just say by 2010, Giants fans were hungry, and to see the team win 3 titles in 5 years was an amazing thing.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
well, hold on. Things that were cyclical because Bobby Jones, as you know, lives in Fresno, right? I mean, which is sort of like
for Fresno State.
Yes, it's sort of like a suburb of the Bay Area, right? That's where
Well,
I watched
it was
hockey.
the minor league home of the Giants for a long time.
Yep, and it's just unbelievable. So it's just so weird and he still lives in Fresno without giving anything away. You know, it's great. I'm sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
I was going to say, you know, and kind of along those same lines, you know, with the New York Mets Giants ties, you know, currently we have Conforto on their roster, of course, and Wilmer Flores. But the one Met / Giant that I'd like to chat about is Jeff Kent, and it seems like he doesn't quite get the respect that he deserves. What are your thoughts on Mr. Kent there?
Well, I mean, he's a complicated guy. I mean, he and I have tussled, you know, literally physically a couple of times. So,
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, there was a time. So he comes in. You know, me and him go way back. There's a lot of history here. So they asked me one year, his agent, Jeff Klein, was like, hey, you know, Jeff wants to be more popular with the fans. And so he wants to do some interviews during spring training. And so we agreed that he would do these interviews and I would be the one who was doing the interviews. The weekend before the first airing of the first interview, he gets in an accident doing wheelies down Scottsdale Road outside Scottsdale Stadium on his motorbike, spills the motorbike in the middle of Scottsdale Road. I got all kinds of people who are calling me, who I know in Arizona. Krug, I just saw Kent spill his bike in front of the stadium. Krug, this happened. Okay. So I'm friends with Ned Coletti. I call up Ned. I'm like, Ned, he's the Giants assistant GM to Brian Sabian at the time. I'm like, Ned, Kent supposedly spilt his motorcycle in front of the stadium. And he's like, I can't talk right now. I'll call you back. So anyway, so Jeff, instead of just copping to it and saying, hey, I spilled my motorcycle, he lies about it and tells everybody that he fell off of his truck while he was washing his truck. But he's so stupid that he didn't realize that Sabian and Coletti and the Giants had all kinds of sources. If this happened in the middle of a high-profile area right outside Scottsdale Stadium, everybody saw it. He was totally cooked, you know. But he had some clause in his contract. He was afraid of losing his contract. They had a great deal on the contract. He was the MVP. They weren't going to try to get out of that contract. So that's all the more dumb for lying about. You know, you're lying because you're afraid they're going to void a contract that's favorable to the team. So he hadn't really even thought it through. So now the next Monday comes up and I'm doing the interview. I said, Jeff, what happened? People said you spilled your motorcycle. You're saying that you fell off your truck washing it. What happened? And so he goes, I fell off my truck while washing it. And I go, well, other people said that, you didn't, and this and that. But I told him off the air. I said, look, I'm going to ask you, you say whatever the heck you want to say. And I'm not going to belabor the whole thing. I'll ask you one or two questions and we'll move on. So he stays with this lie that he fell off his truck. Well, I mean, the Giants knew it was a lie. And it came out later. There were people that hey, we saw him, he fell off his motorcycle. So anyways, now fast forward a couple of years later, he's now on the Astros, and the Astros roll in, and he sees me in the clubhouse, and he starts talking to a group of the writers, and he's looking right at me, even though there's a circle around him. He's looking right at me, and he knows I'm the post-game guy who's bitched and complained a lot about games. So he goes, all you Giants fans, you just need to enjoy the game more. Enjoy the game more. And he starts looking right at me. And then he's like, all you guys do is complain about the game. You people here in the Bay Area are so stupid to pay these prices for real estate, blah, blah, blah. All this. He goes on this tirade. Well, I walked down the hall. I sent it back to the studio. I said, hey, Kent just went off. Listen to this. Tell Ralph and Tom they got to play this. So they're an afternoon drive. 15 minutes later, they're playing these comments on the radio. Well, now he comes up to hit, and he himself had called the Bay Area people stupid for paying the real estate prices. So that's what he was getting booed for. So the entire place starts booing him. Boo, boo. Now, he was partially booed because he was on the other team, but he was partially booed because all these people heard him ripping Bay Area baseball fans as being stupid and this and that. So the next day I go back in the clubhouse, and he's like, grabs me around the neck, and I'm like, grabbed him like this. We're up against the wall.
Wow.
And you got Astro managers and coaches running over. Hey, separate these guys. Get this guy out of here. I'm like, Jeff, what are you doing? So it's complicated. So you're asking me about Jeff. The truth is, he was a great RBI guy. His kid plays for A&M now. He was a great Giant. He made the Matt Williams trade a good trade, when the trade was really supposed to be, the key figure in that trade was supposed to be Julian Tavares, who was just kind of ordinary, and then Jose Vizcaína, who also became kind of ordinary. But then Jeff Kent became an MVP. So Jeff Kent kind of saved Sabian's bacon by becoming one of the National League's best RBI guys. And I'll say this too, though. All the years, Barry Bonds got such a bad rap for not wanting to talk to the media. There would be several games there in the early 2000s where Kent and Bonds were the stars, and we all go into the clubhouse to fish out a quote, and Kent flips us the bird and Bonds flips us the bird, and we're just sitting there talking to Rich Aurelia now. So he was very difficult to deal with, as far as trying to get a quote. He's one of those guys that he was great at baseball, but I don't know that he truly loved baseball. Some guys love it, really love it. Some guys are just good at it. He was really, really good at it. And, he also was kind of he went to Cal, he's from Southern California, but he kind of played this wannabe cowboy stuff. And I used to give him shit about how he had taxidermy in his kitchen nook. And, he had this gigantic head of whatever it was, right there in his little kitchen nook. But, good player, though. Good player and very underrated player. And to me, it's not like he did steroids. Why is he not in the Hall of Fame? He's got arguably the best offensive numbers of any second baseman that ever played the game. But because he played on a team with the most notable steroid abuser, so what? We're just supposed to assume that because Bonds used steroids, that he used steroids? And talk about a guy who's gotten really hosed through the years. He literally is. If he had stayed with the Mets and put up the numbers that he put up with the Giants, he'd be in the Hall of Fame. But because he came to the Giants and played with Bonds, and there's all these steroid suspicions around Bonds, people just group him with Bonds. And I've got no reason to believe that he was anything but 100% clean. So in some ways, I think he's a sympathetic figure.
Yeah, kind of things comes to mind. The current player that comes to mind in terms of like, and not so much the last 2 or 3 years, but Anthony Rendon in terms of like great on the field when he's there, but like that's not his. In his interviews, he's been known to say it's not his. That's not his a number one. Like playing baseball is not exactly what he wants to do too much longer, and fans kind of sense that. So I would say, but no, great story there. I think one thing I would love to kind of get your thoughts on, just kind of since we're talking about Giants right now, in terms. So right now they're sitting at the date of this recording is June 30th. So as of right now, they're sitting 41-44. They're 3 back in the wild card. It seems like the entire National League is in the wild card race outside of Colorado and Miami. So what has to happen with this? The roster that we have before us here for San Francisco. What needs to happen for them to be to make that run towards the end of the season, especially sitting there fourth in a division with 3 super competitive teams right above them?
I mean, the division is done. I mean, they're not
Right.
going to win the division, but I mean, they keep adding wild card teams. So, if you keep adding playoff teams, it becomes easier to make the playoffs. I mean, they're waiting on Robbie Ray. They're waiting on Alex Cobb. I think that they're kind of limping towards the middle of the year with this rotation. If Cobb and Ray come back, then they can take Hicks, who's a reliever, and probably put him back in the bullpen. And they could, potentially take Keaton Winn and put him in the bullpen. And then you would have 2 more really dominant bullpen arms in front of Doval. So there's that. Then they also have some young pitchers. Kyle Harrison is coming off the DL pretty shortly. Today, Landon Root pitched out of the pen. They've got some good young pitchers, Hayden Birdsong and others. Carson Wisenhunt, who's got a really unbelievable fastball changeup. He's 95, 96 with the fastball, and out of the exact same arm slot, he's like 81 on the changeup. It's a true Bugs Bunny, pull the string kind of a pitch. I mean, he might be able to be, a dominant starter with 2 pitches. That's how good of a changeup he's got, and how much of that arm angle is identical to his fastball, and hitters don't pick it up. So, but yeah, I mean, they have some young pitchers they can fill with. Right now, their pitching they're going with bullpen games a couple of times a week just because they don't have the arms. But they do think they're getting, Ray back and Cobb back, and I think they need one more bat, to be honest. I mean, their offensive numbers are decent, but it's a little deceptive. And there's all kinds of games where they struggle to score. Their defense is pretty mediocre. They're doing a few things really poorly. Like they've been making outs on the base pass. They made another out today on the base pass. I think they've made like 10 outs on the base, or 4 outs on the base pass in the last 10 days. So, I mean, they're struggling to run the bases, and they're really struggling to stop opposing teams' running game. They've got one of the best catch and throw catchers. His catch to pop, his catch to release is very, very quick, but they're not holding runners on worth a damn. So they, I don't know. I mean, it's like they're a team without a strength. They have some good offense. If you catch them on the right day, today they swung the bats well. When Chapman and Soler are swinging it well, they look better offensively. To me, they need one more really good outfield bat and some pitching health. But they got as good a shot as anybody. I mean, at the wild card, they're not going to run down the Dodgers, but they could win the wild card and get in there. And if they get in there, if they get Snell and Ray and Cobb and some of their starters back, who knows? I mean, Snell has been atrocious. He's 0-3 with a 9.31 ERA. He's made 6 starts. He's been horrible. If Snell comes back and is the Cy Young Award winner from last year, if Ray comes back and he's the Cy Young Award winner that he was a few years ago, if Cobb comes back and is the same pitcher that he was a year ago, I mean, they could have a very strong finish to their year. So we'll have to see. They're a very volatile team at this point.
Yep, I actually just had throwback to RC Cola. We do that a lot in the show. Love me some RC Cola. Just had some RC Cola out of a Blake Snell Cy Young Cup just a little bit ago. And just thinking about his time with Tampa, like how often, I mean, he was so good, but how often he was pulled out of games in the fifth, sixth inning with 70 pitches, giving up 2 hits, and so he's still got a lot in my personal opinion, age-wise, he's still got a lot left in the tank if he can just get it together, because doesn't have as much tread on the tires, because for so long of his career, he wasn't going 95, 102 pitches. He was, a lot of times in that 70, 80 pitch count. So, but what I would love to touch about, we're
He's
starting
got to
to
throw strikes. He definitely has to.
Well, how much of this?
I got
much-
Penny, my golden retrievers, freaking out. Penny,
Oh,
come here,
beautiful.
Penny.
and I have a raccoon family behind me that's hanging out.
She's this dog is the biggest coward dog of all time, but from the other side of the fence, she sounds like a killer.
Of course, that's up.
Yeah.
So, how much of this do you think is Scott Boris's fault?
What's that?
How much of this do you think is Scott Boris's fault? Having all
mean-
his players hold out.
I mean, you can't.
Not
I mean, his job is to secure the biggest deals for his clients. It doesn't matter if his clients sign on April 1st or March 1st or February 1st or January. It just doesn't matter. So
I like that.
I'm sure his commission cashed, and I'm sure, but yeah, I mean, you could make an argument that, does he care about his players, or does he care only about his commission? I mean, I could make a pretty compelling argument that he prioritizes his commission over placing his players in ideal spots, but his players are also getting paid. He's one of the top agents in the game. I gotta blame the Giants too. I mean, we can blame Boris, and it's always fun to blame the rich agent, and they're universally easy to blame. But the San Francisco Giants, we talked about this earlier, they own their own ballpark. They have a ton of money. They made $421 million in revenue last year. They are a top 3 revenue generator, and yet they're 13th in payroll. So they make a lot of money. And for the Giants and Farhan to squeeze and squeeze and squeeze
That's
and negotiate and not get this guy into spring training, you know what? Shame on you, Farhan. You're the one who didn't get this guy signed till the middle of March. And then guess what? You don't fake spring training. If you don't have spring training, you're going to have spring training in the season. So now you paid this guy $30 million a year, and he's going through spring training in the regular season. And it's all because you're enamored with getting a good deal. And so, I mean, to me, I blame the general manager more than I blame the agent.
But to your point, if I could tie that up, those 3 pitchers that you mentioned, they round into form, and you can sneak into the wild card. They're going to be very tough to beat in short games with those 3 starters.
Yeah, definitely. And so with time, we've got just about a couple minutes left. So last thing I wanted to chat about, maybe I'll start with you, Darren, just talking about Bay Area sports, maybe talking a little bit San Jose Sharks, and then Larry a little bit with the San Francisco 49ers, just kind of what to expect this year, and kind of as we tie things up here.
Larry, I mean, you're a guy that you know your sports, especially Bay Area sports, more than really anybody that I'd want to speak to. I am flabbergasted by what's going on with the San Jose Sharks. Not that they're losing, but there's a lot of teams that lose. They have a down cycle, but the place is packed or nearly packed. The SAP Center, I've gone the last couple of years, pretty empty, easy to get a ticket. I mean, I'm a Ranger fan, true and true, but of course, because I love my hockey and I covered the Barracuda, but I would go to a Sharks game and I could sit comfortably anywhere I want. What's going on with the fan base?
It's a great question. I mean, I would never have predicted this. First of all, from when they're on set, they've been incredibly well supported. The fans have been incredible. Now, something happened during the pandemic, and I don't know what. I don't know if the tickets are too expensive. I don't know if it was hockey fans don't want to sit around other hockey fans wearing masks. I don't know if it was the mask mandates. and hockey fans didn't want to play along. I don't know. I'm literally guessing. The other thing I can say is that the Sharks have treated their fans to such consistent winning and competitive seasons that they're probably not used to losing. I mean, and the bottom really fell out. Obviously, I think the general manager, Doug Wilson, has to take some of the blame. I mean, they kind of went for some high profile, expensive guys, and like the defenseman who they just got rid of, and Carlson, and they went for some high priced guys, and they moved some draft pick capital to get those guys. And then the bottom just kind of fell out, but they'll be back. I mean, they just drafted Macklin Celebrini with the first pick in the draft. They think he's going to be the face of the franchise. We'll find out. I expect the fans to be back there. It's a great place to watch games. Their fans are incredibly loyal. I only usually go, because I live about 50, 60 miles north of there. I usually only go a couple times a year. But yeah, when I went during the pandemic, I was shocked. I was shocked how empty the place was.
Just on a hockey
I don't know
note,
I don't know if there's a real reason that I could point to. I mean, there's probably some Shark knowledgeable media person that could give you a better answer than what I just gave you, but I don't.
No,
I don't see an obvious. I don't see anything obvious.
I never thought about the pandemic and the lasting effects. People get new habits, new buying habits, this or that. The Warriors are playing better. You can watch that on television. You have the Golden Knights now you can watch, which is sort of like a rival home team, for lack of a better term, you can watch on television. But
and also, it's the West Coast. I mean, it's California. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, I would say probably 95% of the Sharks audience didn't grow up with it. So, you cover the longer a team's been in a market, I think, their fans are going to follow them through good and bad times. San Jose hasn't had a lot of bad times. So maybe this is their fan base. The combination of the pandemic and, some lean years was enough, but they'll bounce back because it's still a very well-run franchise.
Mike, I just want to ask one other question, and then I know you got a couple you want to ask before we go, but Larry, I got to ask you. I know it's pox probably on both sides, but what the hell is going on in Oakland? How do you lose in 3 years your top flight basketball team? You lose the Raiders, and now you lose the Athletics.
Well, Oakland is bankrupt, and there's no civic dollars there, and the civic leaders are terrible, and they don't understand that there's value to these franchises, value to these municipalities to have these franchises. So it's like, hey, if you tell, we're not spending we're not spending $1 on anything for you. We're not spending $1 on infrastructure. And then, the Raiders and A's play in a very terribly the Raiders left, of course, the A's are on the verge of leaving. They play in just a very outdated stadium. It's in a great spot, but it's an outdated stadium. The thing that's so disgusting about this is that, there's multiple issues. Joe Lacob bought the team and moved him to San Francisco because he was dreaming the big real estate dream. And now he's built this opulent palace, and the franchise is worth, billions of dollars. So he's made money hand over fist. But the big problem, the Raiders left because Mark Davis had no money. And, he found a city in Vegas that would basically throw a bunch of money at him. And now he's a bigwig. He's drinking off the top shelf. He's going to fancy clubs. He's the toast of the town. He's got a brand new house. He's living life in Vegas, but he didn't have any real money. So he just kind of ran to where there was some money. John Fisher is the guy who really needs to be raked over the coals. That's the owner of the A's. Why? Because he is literally the richest owner in American professional sports. The guy's worth $9 billion. He easily could have built a baseball stadium with his own dime, never involved any other public or private entity. He could have just written it off of what you could have wrote the check off of what he has in the bank. And he would own his own stadium right now, would probably be on the verge of being paid off at this point. And he'd be sitting on one of the biggest real estate deals in North American history. Instead, he decided, no, I'm a cheap ass. I'm going to sit there. I'm going to cry poor. I'm going to cry poor. I'm going to collect $30 to $40 million off the MLB general fund until they kick me off the dole. He did that for a decade and piled up $500 million of profit, keeping, he kept his costs down, cried poor, took $40 million from the general fund. Eventually, MLB's leadership said, it's probably not in our best interest to keep giving losers like the A's $40 million off the general fund. So they basically said, 2 years from now, you're going to be off the dole. You're not going to be able to sap off the general fund. Well, that was about 3 or 4 years ago. And so now that he's no longer able to collect that $40 million profit from the general fund, now he's suddenly very urgent about getting a new stadium. And he doesn't want, it's like these franchises are assets that are very, very valuable. Supply and demand, there's far more demand for this asset than there is supply. So the profit, the amount of money that you get for your team when you sell it is always exponentially more than you ever paid for it. He has all kinds of people offering to buy the team from him, but he doesn't want to sell it. Well, why would you want to sell it either when you've run it poorly? I mean, name me another business in America where you can run it as poorly as John Fisher has run the A's and still carve out a $40 to $50 million annual profit at the same time as watching the paper value of the franchise continue to exponentially skyrocket upwards. So, he's made a mint and they've lost. And Billy Beane was super passionate about winning a World Series. And so, you know what they did? They said, you know what? We're really uncomfortable with how passionate Billy is about winning a World Series. Let's put him on the payroll too. So then they gave him part of the action, and now he's a sellout. Now he doesn't. 100%. Now he never says anything. He doesn't compare. He doesn't care. Why does he care? He makes $50 million in speaking engagements. He owns 1.8% of the team, which, as long as they keep the prices down, he's getting wealth that he would never, ever, ever enjoy as a general manager. So they shut him. They paid him hush money, and they alienated their fans. The sad thing is, if tomorrow they sold that franchise to Joe Lacob, there'd be 50,000 the next night, because there's lots of A's fans. They're just basically on strike because of their feelings are anti-John Fisher. Fisher has prioritized his own personal wealth over the well-being of that franchise. And Rob Manfred and prior to him, his predecessor, Bud Selig, have allowed him to do it. And so now baseball has what they have. They've got, once again, is it good for baseball to have a team abandon the nation's 5th or 6th largest market to jump to Vegas, which is like the 41st largest market? No, but it's a backroom deal. Was it good for the NBA to have the Seattle Supersonics leave whatever the Seattle market is, 17 or 18, for Oklahoma City? No. Nope. But Clay Bennett cut a backroom deal with David Stern, and that's what's going on there. So that's what's happening with the A's. They've got baseball in their pocket. Nope, there's been no pressure. I will say this: the A's, when the Giants didn't have anywhere to go, the A's owners gave the Giants owners the territorial rights to the South Bay, Santa Clara County. The Giants then tried to get a stadium built there, couldn't get it built, eventually got it built in San Francisco. But the Giants owners will not give the A's owners back the rights to the Santa Clara County market.
That is so interesting. That's a little inside baseball. You're right.
And the Giants owners, I've questioned the Giants owners to their face on the radio about this. And their claim is that the loans that they took to secure the building of Pac-Bell Park all were there with putting up, part of the collateral was that the Giants owned the rights to the South Bay, which is a very wealthy area. But so what? That stadium is paid off now. I mean, MLB should have gotten involved and forced the Giants to give or sell the A's the rights to the South Bay so they could have one team in San Jose, 50 miles south, one team up here in the North Bay, and take advantage of an incredibly wealthy Northern California dual team market. Instead, they're going to Vegas. And we'll see how that all works out. It sounds good up front. We'll see how it works out.
Larry, this was outstanding. I actually want to end it here. I had one or two questions, but I feel that we're going to have, and if you're good for it, we'll have you on again maybe in a few months. I'd love to have you back and kind of have a part two here, because this whole podcast of these last 10 minutes has just been outstanding. Like, just such wise, like what you're saying is so true, and really enjoyed having you on. Thank you so much for being with us here tonight. And again, I just want to let all the listeners know where you can find him again, the Krug Show on YouTube, at Sports Larry K on X. Also some merch available on thekrugshow.com. Check that out as well. But Larry,
I'm going to get me some.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Have our word on that. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and look forward to speaking again sooner than later, Larry. Really appreciate it. Again, thanks, Christopher Bennett, National Tax Solutions. And until next time, everybody, we'll see you around the ballpark.